afternoon, everybody. So even as I stand here, I am making a promise to myself. The promise is that in the next about half an hour, I would have deemed it to be a good job done by me if I put all of you to sleep. And that is my every intention. So I'm going to put you all to bed. You will, right now what I see is huge competition. Who is my competitor? A mobile phone. Because what people are doing in this room will be looking at a mobile phone. And some people will also flatter me by trying to take pictures of me. But actually, they're not taking a picture, but they're actually looking at themselves. But it's okay. Why would anybody call somebody like me on a lazy afternoon to speak about a book? First of all, I would be very pretentious if I said that I am an author. I'm not really an author. It just happened to be by accident than by design. It so happened that I used to write a lot of stories. I love stories. Hey, by the way, how many of you love stories? Raise your hands. Okay. Now you have a choice. I have in front of me a document which would have about 8 pages, which I can read out to you, or I could share some stories with you. What would you prefer? By raise stories. Okay. Stories. Okay, so, we would all get into things like, what has influenced a lot in your life? Many, many years ago, I got influenced by a very, very charming boss of mine. Now, in your life, I can tell you this, you will not love a lot of your bosses. Bosses are painful. If you don't believe me, I have a gentleman sitting out there in a nice white-colored or gray-colored jacket out there. I was his boss at one point in time. I can tell you this, as long as I was in that firm, I'm not sure whether he liked me very much, but today he's here. I had a boss who I genuinely loved. Why? Because I think he liked me, or he tolerated me for who I was. Now, I came out from one of those really nice big schools, B schools, and I was doing very well. I got a job in a big multinational, and I was full of it. And I was told that I have to go to a factory, and this is going to be in a place called Gomia in Bihar. Now, I have a reputation, guys, that if I'm in a state for more than 8 years, the state splits. It has happened to me once in Gomia, then I went to Hyderabad, then you know what happened. So when I went to Gomia, I had a letter which said, you will be received by a driver and a car, and you'll be taken to the guest house. And I was feeling very, very happy about all that stuff. And when I landed, there was nobody to receive me. No placard, nothing. And I said, oh my God, now I do not know what I'm going to do. In those days, you didn't have all these trolleys and all that. You had something called a hold all. You remember those hold alls? You got to put them aside, you got to pull them out and put all your stuff inside, roll them in. And it had a leather handle. It was very heavy. And I'm a tall guy, as you can all see. And I was lugging it this way and carrying one other, and platform, unfortunately, was on the other side. So you can imagine the effort that I had to take to get to the other side. Nobody there to receive me. And then in a distance, I saw a very nice blue-colored, old-fashioned Peugeot. It's a beautiful car. Beautiful car. Really nice, burnished, shiny all over. And there was a gentleman, and he was wearing a khaki trouser and a white-colored vest. And he looked at me, I looked at him, and he waved out to me. And I said, well, this is getting better. So I walked up to him, and he looked at me. He says, in Hindi, he speaks to me in Hindi. And he asked me where I was going. So I said, I have to go there. He says, I was waiting for you. And immediately I pointed to my luggage. I said, can you please make sure that it is in the car? Very faithfully, he opened the dicky. He lugged this big thing, put it inside. He sat in the driver's seat. I sat behind. And then the car started. And all the way, he started asking me all kinds of questions. And I was getting irritated with the driver who spoke too much. And we came somewhere near the guest house. And somewhere near the guest house, it's a very nice, beautiful building. There were 4 or 5 people who came rushing. And as soon as they saw the car, these guys ran and they all saluted. And I was feeling very, very happy because they were all saluting me because I was now the big guy coming in and going to change their lives. Anyways, this gentleman thanked me. I thanked the driver. And then he went away. Next day, I was supposed to meet the chief executive of that place. Now, this gentleman he was known to be a very difficult gentleman. Very, very well-read. It's difficult as it is to speak to people who are well-read. And you find a lot of them in the audience. And then on top of that, this gentleman was known to be very sharp. So I was given all kinds of stories of how he is going to be the next day morning in trepidation. There's a long corridor. I walked all along and entered a room which had a lot of wood inside. So you can imagine one of those old British buildings. And in the corner, I found a person, factory overalls, facing the wall. And then he slowly turned around. And the moment I saw him, I said, hey, what are you doing on that side of the table out there? It was my driver. And as soon as I saw him, he looked at me and he said, gentlemen, my name is Dr. Shiven Verma. I almost froze. He said, take a seat. I couldn't take a seat. I was standing like a child, and I would have rather he shouted at me or done something to me, but anyways, he didn't. I sat down. I have no idea about the rest of the conversation, but one thing I learned. As I was leaving the room, he made a statement. He says, use your education. Use your education well, but don't wear it as epaulets on your shoulders. And the best part about the humility of the gentleman was he never referred to it ever in all the several meets that we had. Normally what happens in parties and all that, they would make fun of you. Say, this is what he did. He never mentioned it. I was raised, fortunately, in an organization like that. Wonderful organization. That's the story. One more. So, how many of you like to be appreciated? Yeah, okay. All of us like to be appreciated. But do we appreciate each other? No? Do we? Not much. We don't. Suppose you went and told your mother that she's looking really good in a new sari or an old sari for all you know. What's she going to say? What do you want? Yeah? What do you need? We live in this world. This is the reality. Same factory. I had a boss. This boss was an army officer retired. What would you expect from an army officer retired? A person is very, very strict. He was very strict. How would I dress to office? In normal office clothes. And I had a pair of shoes which had seen better days. Worse, I'd never even cleaned it. It used to be muddy. One day, it so happened that it rained. When it rained, my shoes got cleaned. When my shoes got clean, I just happened to go into my boss's office. He looked at me, my shoes, and he says, "Hey, Nathan, your shoes are shining." Now, what do I tell him? It's not to do with me, but I soaked up all of that. What do you think I did the next day before I went to work? I shined my shoes. I still shine my shoes. I still shine my shoes before I go. Every time I shine my shoes, I remember Captain Nautiyal. I remember Captain Nautiyal because he caught me doing something right. Of course, it was not me, it was the rains. But every day he would find an opportunity to say, "Hey, you did this right, you did this right." He could have found 10 reasons to say, "You're not good, this is not right." What do we do in a corporate world? We find faults. We find faults. I'm not saying finding fault is the wrong thing, but can we find something good in somebody once a day? That's the story. Okay. One more? Okay. So, I was working in a very large US-based multinational, and I had joined them, and I was in charge of a pretty large organization, and I was feeling very, very happy. I wanted a stenographer. Now, what does a stenographer do? Type, take dictation. And I felt that as a boss, I should say something, and the person should type it, and I would correct it, and then he would type this and give it back to me. Google now does all this stuff and puts you to shame. Right? You don't need any of that now. In those days, we needed that. The guy sat in front of me, would undergo a test. Any person sitting in front would undergo a test. There are lots of people like that. Finally, my team told me that there are only 3 people that we have shortlisted. You must choose one of them. So I said, fine. And they also told me, one of them you won't even like. I said, why would I not like somebody? He says, because he's very short. And I had to remind them that I'm not very tall either. So I said, look, it's okay. First interview, second interview, third interview, they said, this is the person. The person came in. And the person came in, not a great looking person. He was short. Worse, he was also a little podgy. He put on a lot of weight. He came and sat in front of me, and I excused myself. I went outside the room and did a small prayer. I said, I don't want any bias to come in when I interview this candidate. So I hope I'm aware of myself. I made that small prayer to myself, sat down, had the interview. In 5 minutes, I knew that I had a winner sitting in front. Very confident, doing a lot of stuff. At the end of 30 minutes, I knew that he was the person. And then, perchance, I asked this question, so what did you do in your undergrad? He said, BSc Physics. BSc Physics, what was your percentage? 86. I could have covered my head in shame. Because sitting in front of me was a person who would have been a university rank holder for sure. I looked at him and I said, gentlemen, you're hired, but in 18 months, I have to fire you. Are you game? He said, why would I want to join you if you're going to fire me in exactly 18 months? He said, because you will not do this job anymore. We will find another job for you, but I don't think you should be doing this. He said, that's fine. 10 years later, the gentleman came home and he had a letter in his hand. He wanted to make sure that my wife was also with me. So the two of us, he says, I've got something to show you. And he gives the letter to me and he says, Mr. Nathan, I want to leave your organization. So I said, that's fine, man, but why bring my wife into this? He says, no, no, I've got something to share with you. Anyways, I said, you're not leaving this company. He said, please take a look. And as I opened that letter, I smiled because it says, Dear Mr. Nagaraj, we welcome you to the family of so-and-so company as a general manager, human resources. That's a story of a stenographer who made it. Currently, by the way, he's a associate vice president as well in a very, very large MNC in Hyderabad. I mean, the stories are replete. It taught me something that day. When he left my house, I was thinking, what would have happened if many of us at that time had not got over a little bit of the bias? Because we all hold biases. Oh, he is too dark, he is too short, he is too tall, he is this, she is like this, she is like that. We hold biases. Well, that's one more story. And all of that is possibly to do with experiences in our lives. And as I'm speaking, you would have a lot of stories with you of the times when you went through a few things in your own life. What I have is the Heart of Work is a compilation of several stories, about 70 of them. All 70 stories, no more than 4-minute read. So I'm here only to introduce this. I'm more of a storyteller. I have no idea why I was invited, maybe because I just wrote a few of them and compiled them. That's why I'm here. I think my time is up. I've got to go sit there and people will ask me questions, I guess. Thank you.